They're coming. They're coming your way. They'll be here soon. Will you be ready?
My fellow Mexican, I was scared of the dancing baby gif. I don't know why, but I was. It looked creepy to me. I've never heard of anyone being scared of the dancing baby gif, but I chose this just to show that everyone has their own personalized fears that not everyone shares. Let me know in the comments if the dancing baby ever freaked you out. Personally, I can see kind of why you'd be creeped out by it. It's a pretty good definition of uncanny valley, especially when you consider this came out during the mid-90s, when there were really not a lot of examples of CG character models. We were still getting used to it, so it's kind of jarring to see this during that time. It was one of the very first memes ever created, and it has a fascinating history that I'm afraid I won't have time to talk about, though I'm sure there's plenty of videos, articles, documentaries, and whatever that's already talked about it in length, so just watch those. I never grew up with the dancing baby. Actually, maybe I did, I just never really noticed. I didn't get into computers until like 2008 or 9, and I was really old by then, so those kinds of memes really passed me by. Milky Way gave me the blackout in Luigis Mansion. This sounds kind of silly, but I remember being so scared of the section in Luigis Mansion when the blackout occurs. The telephone room had no music, and upon leaving, the panic of a bunch of ghosts chasing you was stressful. Luigis Mansion does this strange yet wonderful thing that I think seldom ever shows up in horror games, which is to never fully be scary, but embrace creepiness. That's how I felt about Luigi's Mansion. I was never fully scared of the game, but it was just creepy enough that I never really felt safe lowering my guard. One such example would be the part where the blackout occurs after a lightning bolt strikes the mansion. It's intense because up until this point, you've been able to light up every room that's cleared of ghosts and ghouls. Now all that progress has spun backwards. It doesn't last long, but I can definitely see how this created anxiety and fear, and I certainly didn't like that part any more than you did. We have blossoming Sakurajan with the killer bushes from Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage. Really scared me a lot. They're disguised as bushes, but they close in on you to gobble you up. A small thing, but I remember being scared of it. Well, I never played any of the Spyro games, but I can tell you, mimic enemies have been the sum of most people's fears when playing any sort of video game. Remember the mimics from Dark Souls? Unbelievable. Anyways, I should probably dedicate a whole episode on mimic enemies because they always seem to have the worst designs, and by worst, I mean scariest. So thanks for the suggestion, I'll keep this in mind. LeeB then gave me this, the game over scene in Katamari Damacy, where the King of Cosmos yells at you, scared me to death as a child. I would always run and hide when it played. The king just belittled and insulted you, always made me feel bad when I was younger. God, that's not even scary, that's just sad. Oh my god, look at LeeB's icon. Why is it so fitting? I'm so sorry you had to deal with that. I hate characters that make players feel bad. You don't deserve it, LeeB. You're a champ. The king's a fucking asshole anyways, don't listen to it. Then we have Ope, or OP. Okay, this is really silly, but I got traumatized by Mulan. It was the girl's doll and the village burning that did it. In my head, it was going to happen to me since I was a kid, and I thought getting burned alive was a normal thing. I was like 5, but still. Jesus Christ, this is one of those examples where our imaginations are actually much scarier than what we initially think about. I mean, seriously, that is a horrifying thing to think about as a kid, and the worst part is that it's not even totally wrong. Well, at least in the context of the film. Back in those times, being burned alive was most definitely a common way to go. Just imagining a little girl from Mulan getting burned alive and dying with their family, I mean, that's definitely a strong image that probably would affect most people. It's just surprising that you'd come to that conclusion as a kid. The number taker from the Numberjacks always freaked me out. Way too scary for the 4 to 5-year-old audience it was going for. That whole show was one weird trip, to be honest. Now, what in the world is the Numberjacks? I never really heard of it. Oh my god! Wait, this is the guy you're scared of? Not these horrible abominations? I tell you, as kids, we really let a lot of shit slip through. Like, yeah, we'll get scared of obvious things, but stuff like this? I mean, God, why weren't you scared of these guys? So The Numberjacks, for any of my American bros and sisters that don't know, is a show about a bunch of alien creatures that live in a couch. No, not on, I mean in the couch. They stay dormant until some brat calls them and demands that they solve crimes. How exactly? By doing math. Wow. Cool. Anyways, this show lasted for like 3 years, and the number taker, I assume, is their arch nemesis, taking every number in the world and stealing anything that comes in a pair of those numbers. Like, one time he stole the number 4, and then he suddenly decided that's good enough reason to steal 4 of everything, including this lady's groceries, which I'm sure she was going to use to just help her poor starving children. What an absolute knobhead. Also, probably one of the worst Doctor Who villains ever. It's silly, but it's a kid's show, so I don't think it's much to really delve into. I don't know if it counts, but one time in the first grade, the thing that traumatized me was seeing this video called Yelling Creature by Rob Herman. It would scare me for a long time due to the uncanniness. It had a creepy background, the body looked like clay, and the face was superimposed. It was the introduction to that weird side of YouTube and disturbed me to the max. Eventually I got over it, but Rob just announced that he may be doing more in the future. I would be curious if you're able to cover it for this year's Traumathon. It would be neat. Well, if Rob Herman made any other creepy content that was worth it, I would love to dedicate an episode on him, but sadly, I can't make an episode on a 6-second loop. What I can say is that what you said about this video pretty much sums up everything. The creepy noise, the weird background, the face that's human-esque, but the head that's like so inhuman. There's no denying it. This is freaky. Then Echo Waves gave me this. I think the most scary thing that I remember was the face that appeared in between shows on Nick Jr. Every time I saw it appear, it freaked me out so much that I just look away from the TV and cover my ears as to not listen to what he's saying. I even had nightmares about it too for years until I forgot it existed for a while. Even looking back at the blocks by looking at videos of it, some of the stuff it says and does is still very weird and a little unnerving. I actually wrote down face from Nick Jr. on my journal, and I definitely was going to cover him, but the more I thought about it, the less I could justify him being on Traumathon. I think there's definitely an odd air about him, but if you really watch any of the bumps with Face, he was honestly a real chill, wholesome, and funny guy. I still vividly remember coming back home from elementary school and seeing Face still on TV as Nick Jr. was just ending its programming block. I really loved him. And the amount of creative things that they did with Face, despite him being, well, a face with a blank color, I mean, that's incredible. They were so limited with what they could do, yet found so many ways to do anything. I respect that. Apparently in 2004, they changed his design, if you can even believe that, seeing as how there's not really much to change, and they gave him a new voice. He's way more obnoxious now than his previous iteration, which was often more soft-spoken. This guy was just another way louder and energetic personality that was already flooding the mid-2000s, and I don't know, I'm not really into it. Ash1106 gave me, I forgot which one it is, but I remember watching one of the Final Destination movies as a kid, and the scene that got me was the one where the girl is on an escalator that breaks and gets crashed to death. Oh, sorry. I think you mean crushed to death by the gears. After that, I was crazy scared of escalators. I want to say it was maybe 2 or 3 years till I finally got over it. I haven't really watched any of the Final Destination movies after the second one, but each movie has always seemed to ramp up the gore and kill counts each and every installment, and it sort of instills a new phobia in kids, well, any kids that are willing to watch the movie. Honestly, there's a lot of scenes from every Final Destination film that was pretty horrible, and I'm pretty sure each and every one has given someone a nightmare. Some movies made you scared of serial killers or sleeping, or maybe even going to camp, but Final Destination made you fear everything. I do remember this one elevator scene very vividly and had nightmares about it for a real long time. I hated it. I'm sure this movie gave me my slight fear of elevators. I'm still scared that someday I'll get trapped in one, or that I'll fall as it's rising to the top of the building. Fuck this franchise. It really fucked with all of us. Alright, I think that just about covers it for some strange user suggestions. I know I'm not really touching on more popular ones or ones that I feel most of you would expect, but I really wanted to touch on some of the more minor suggestions. I gotta be honest, a lot of the suggestions you guys gave me were really good, and I even wrote down some of them in my journal to keep in mind in case I ever want to cover them in greater detail this year or next year. There were also a lot that made me realize just how scary some shows were, most of the time unintentionally. Do you guys honestly know how many times I saw SpongeBob suggestions? Seriously, there's loads of them. Hopefully I get down to the more popular ones this year while October's still young, but if not, remember, there's always next year. For now, let's enjoy the next half of Traumathon 2 while it's still going strong.